On the country using genetic genealogy to solve cold cases and give victims' families justice.
I think about the victim's family all the time when I'm doing the work. I mostly just hope that it brings a sense of closure and peace.
Well, so you understand, Cece's work helped arrest a suspect, Daryl Wayne Bowden, in the Ramsey Street rapist case. But she has never met Kobe in person. Until now. Cece, come out and please meet this young woman.
It's so nice to see you. How you doing?
Really good. Oh, I got some makeup on your jacket.
Hi.
Good to see you. How are you?
Nice to see you again.
Yeah.
I know Dr. Phil better than you might think.
Yes. Cece knows a lot about me and a lot about my family because I did a show called Finding Your Roots on PBS with Professor Gates, and you did all the DNA work. Here is an example of how Cece narrows in on a suspect, and it all starts with the match. And Cece, kind of walk us through this.
So the crime scene DNA is compared to a database called GEDmatch, and there's about 1.2 million people in that database. We're looking for people that share significant stretches of DNA with that suspect. And then based on how much DNA someone shares with him, I can reverse engineer his family tree based on their family trees. So our chart here shows two different matches. They each share about 1% of their DNA with our unknown suspect, which means they're probably third cousins with him. They also share DNA with each other, which means they should have a common ancestral couple. So if I can figure out how match number 1 and match number 2 are related, then I know that the suspect also has to descend from that same common ancestor. This particular case was a little bit more complicated than that, but this is sort of the general idea of the work that I'm doing.
It helps them go identify a suspect, then they can start the investigation from there as opposed to just shooting in the dark.
Right. I'm providing a highly scientific tip, but the investigators still have to build that case against that person.
Right.
There's no way they would arrest based on genetic genealogy. They'd only be able to do that if they could confirm my findings and build a case against that person.
And there have been a lot of cases that have been solved. Raymond Charles Rowe murdered and raped a 25-year-old elementary school teacher. The case was 25 years old. You helped identify him, and he pled guilty. John Dale Miller murdered and molested an 8-year-old girl. The case was 30 years old. He was identified and pled guilty. Spencer Glenn Monette raped a 79-year-old woman. The case was 3 months old. He was identified and pled guilty. So these are just some of the cases that through this work they were identified. How can you at home help Cece crack her next cold case? We'll talk about that after the break. Well, I've been speaking with Cece Moore, who is a pioneer in the field of genetic genealogy. She's now using her skills to solve some of the country's most notorious cold cases, and you at home can help. So how can viewers at home help by building out this database even more?
There are about 26 million people who have participated in consumer DNA testing. So they might have tested at Ancestry DNA, 23andMe, MyHeritage DNA, but law enforcement doesn't have access to those databases. And so if someone has taken a test like this, they can choose to download their raw data. That's their genetic ATCs and Gs in a file, and they can upload it to a public website called GEDmatch, or GEDmatch Genesis. If they do that and they make it public, then that's available for us to help law enforcement resolve these cold cases. And